Good morning, everyone. Sorry about the little bit of delayed start here. But let's get started without a lot of delay here. So I'm Krithika Prakash. I'm a senior technical staff member at the IBM Automation Development Organization. I have a packed agenda today because in the time frame that we have, given this is a workshop, I want to take you through some of the cool and exciting things that we have been doing in IBM, especially around cloud integration. Given this is API Days conference, I want to focus on APIs and applications. You hear me okay? There is a slight echo. Okay. So APIs, as you might have heard the past 2 days, they form the core of any of your business requirements. And if you heard Eileen from IBM talk yesterday, she mentioned how important it is to have an API management solution that brings all your APIs into one place where you can manage, secure, run, analyze, and all that, right? So we'll talk more about our API management solution, but this session is mainly focused on the AI features of where we are trying to infuse AI and how you can make it easier for organizations to adopt an API-driven flows, right? And applications, you have multiple backend applications. I'm also going to talk about another product within our Cloud Pak for Integration portfolio called App Connect, which lets you connect multiple applications together using connector objects. So just keep up with me. And if you have any questions, I'm around here for the rest of the day, so you can come and chat with me on any of these topics. So how we have infused AI is already we have a low code and a no code solution for you to connect multiple applications together. But even further, for a user persona, who we call as Cassie, who's a business user, who may not know about the different connector objects that are available, we have provided an assist capability, a goal-oriented flow assist. And the rest of the session, most of it is going to be like what that goal-oriented flow assist, how it takes a natural language where you just type in your requirement in English and it picks it up and builds the flows for you. That's what I'm going to be covering. So that's the first topic. And the second one is going to be on API Connect. Again, there are two products that I'm going to be covering today. So if you're following me, App Connect is where you connect multiple applications together, and API Connect is where you have a centralized API management solution. So in API Connect, there are multiple components and functionalities like developing APIs, managing them, and testing them. So how we have done or enabled seamless testing without you having to write test cases using this auto test capability that we just released last month. That's what I'm going to be covering. And if time permits, I'm going to also show you a demo of whatever I'll be talking right now. Okay, so let's start with the API lifecycle. So in any API management environment, you cannot think of that as one task. You have to invest in understanding what APIs that you want to create. Like you can have multiple business applications, but you want to put some thought into what are those applications that you want to expose as APIs. And of course, security is a major part of it. So if you have a banking application, you want to make sure that it is secured using the correct credentials, OAuth, OpenID Connect. The same time, if it is a public API where you're just giving out your locations or the directions to your center, that's a different set of security. You still want to think about security, right? You don't want a denial of service attack or anything, even for your public APIs. And then you manage the API. So what if your developers change the version, like they introduce a new parameter to your API, and you want to be able to manage that without impacting all the existing users who are using the current version. And there's no use if you did all that, but you didn't make your APIs discoverable by either your own organization, right? So you could be in the HR department exposing APIs used by the finance department, right? So you want to enable the discovery of your APIs, and also for external users, application developers, or partners, right? So that's the full API lifecycle that you want to think about. And in order to effectively implement all the tasks that I just mentioned, you also want to think in terms of personas, right? I'm not saying that you have to hire this many people for every API establishment that you're going to be doing. But from a persona aspect, like there has to be someone who's responsible for developing the APIs, like who's the core developer, or here are the operations, the path, what parameters go into which path, and each path, how they are secured. So that's the API developer. The product manager takes the role of putting together a catalog of APIs, right? Like I have all of these as public APIs, and these are the ones that we are going to monetize. Here is how I apply the rate limiting for my APIs. So that's the role of a product manager. And of course, consumer, again, you want to separate your consumer into different orgs. Maybe you have a free tier and a premium tier. You want to apply different rate limits. So you want to think about having a consumer and provider org. So your API consumer should be able to discover and start using the APIs, and also have some quotas, right? So for that, you need to think about from an API consumer perspective. So DevOps and architect, so all that is business as usual. Any system that you deploy, you want to make sure that it is automated. Any changes, it automatically picks up through the CI/CD pipeline. So this is like the overall strategy that you want to employ when you're thinking about dealing with an API management solution. So think of that, the client is connecting to your APIs, and that in turn is connecting to your internal applications, right? So the App Connect, the product that I was talking to you about, which helps you connect to different applications or many applications together, that's where the integration comes in. Again, even in here, you have all of these different personas, right? Like who's going to be the developer for exposing your database as one application, right? And these two merge. So that's why we also have a capability of co-authoring, where you have App Connect connecting different applications. I'm going to give you an example if it is still abstract for you as to what I mean by connecting applications, right? And then you have connected applications which are exposed as one API. So you get a message that goes through your API management solution, which in turn goes through the flow to do the integration. So these are all like scenarios where you have a hybrid cloud environment and you want to connect two applications, that maybe one where you're trying to move from on-prem to cloud. You can have multiple gateways, as Dan was talking about in yesterday's session, how you can integrate, even if you have workloads running on multiple clouds, how you can bring those together using one solution or one gateway that can provide a centralized view of where everything is running without having your clients and the consumers of your APIs or these applications know about what is going on in the backend, right? So you can provide that seamless integration capabilities. So App Connect, as I was saying, right? So this is an example of how you would say SAP is an application. You don't own that application. It is a third-party application that you're using, but App Connect provides connectors to connect into these applications. And you can come up with this kind of a logic, right? So if there is a new entry in my SAP, then do this, or send me a notification, or send a Slack message. So essentially, you're connecting those two applications together. Another example could be, whenever I get someone registered in my Eventbrite, put a notification in this Slack channel, right? So those are the kind of flows that you want to create, which you want to run on a regular basis, right? So you want someone to keep monitoring your email account or your Slack channel to see for any new events coming in there. And we do provide these capabilities. Once you have App Connect configured, it's going to do this for you. You can add the logic that you want, where to send the message. So all this is like no code, right? You would drag and drop things. And this is to give you an idea of all the connectors that are out there, right? So many applications keep coming up, and for the different business requirements, you have all of these different types of connector objects. So far I have just set the context as to what API Connect is and what App Connect is. I've not even talked about the core of this session, but I want to stop here to see if anyone has any questions so far before I dive into the AI aspects of these products. Okay, so I hope everything is clear, at least at this point. So now let's talk about how we are infusing AI. So as I was saying, why are we doing this, right? I talked about how it is no code, low code. But even then, if you looked at the number of connectors, and it keeps growing, right? We keep adding a lot of connectors. So a business user may not be able to keep up with everything that is there out there, and it is going to be hard for someone to search for any templates. Like Slack to Gmail is so simple that you can wrap your head around it, but think about some complex connectors which might involve multiple objects in one connector. Like you might want to retrieve that object and then pass that as an input into another object, right? So it can get really complex. Even if you have templates, it may not be always the same thing that your customers might want to use for a new use case, right? So you will be able to benefit from having something that can auto-generate these flows for you from just some natural language utterance that you can produce. So that's the task that our IBM research team took. And this slide is quite heavy, and even the next one is also heavy, but I wanted to throw it out there for you to look at what is actually going underlying all these implementations around taking something from English utterance and building it as a flow, right? So these are all the connectors. So the GOFA, which is called the goal-driven integration, goal-oriented flow assist. So that capability, it is first understanding all the connectors that are there. So that's the knowledge graph it builds. So this knowledge graph, it takes all the connectors from your existing App Connect instance, like what are all the connector objects supported. Once it discovers and it builds that, you give an utterance, and then it's going to do this planning. Like, okay, you have said from Gmail, send to Slack, right? So it is going to understand, okay, I have to first connect to the Gmail application, get the emails from Gmail, and then convert that as input into the Slack or wherever you want to send that as a notification, extract the header, the content. So the connector will do all that for you. But this AI planner is going to put these in the right order and specify the right parameters as to what objects that you want to pick from your first application and what you want to map it into the second. And at the end of all of this, you get this, right? So you have Slack, ServiceNow, and Gmail. So this has these errors because these are not connected in the sense I haven't specified any credentials there. But I'll show you in the demo what happens when you have already specified credentials and the connector can go and fetch the information, right? So this is the core of GOFA, which again, as I was saying, it is a research project that we have now integrated into our Cloud Pak for Integration portfolio. And this is more technical in terms of architecture, but if anyone is interested in this, there is also a paper that was published by the IBM research group, which you can go and take a look and read more. But at a high level, so you send in the utterance, that's the 0th step, and that goes into this common GOFA server, which handles all the input and the output into these different applications. But you send the utterance, and that gets processed by an abstract meaning representation, AMR service. Say you said from Gmail to Slack, it's going to split that into, okay, from Gmail is a noun, and then Slack is another connector. So it's going to parse your input, and then that output from that service is going to go into this knowledge graph, which I showed you, which knows about what you're trying to actually build. So it can make sense out of, okay, Slack is a connector, and I have to go and fetch all the objects from Slack. And Gmail is another connector object, so let me go and fetch everything, because it knows it was bootstrapped with all the connector information. So, and that output in turn, the IKG, the knowledge graphs output, in turn goes into this AI planner in this planning domain definition language, which is an AI planning language. But that's the, and from the AI planner is responsible for example, making sure that it is in the right order, right? So first Slack, then Gmail, but not the other way around, based on your input utterance. So, and finally, the YAML is sent back to your App Connect, which then gets displayed. I'll try to show a demo for this, but that's the overall flow or the internal architecture as to how this is done. A key thing there is this knowledge graph. Today, we are using it for App Connect because we have bootstrapped it with all the App Connect related information. But the power of this really lies on how we can extend this or even use it elsewhere, where if we want to infuse this knowledge graph with some other kind of information, then we should be able to use the core component or the implementation of the knowledge graph to be able to use it for other areas as well. This is now released and available as a, both as a service as well as in the product. So the as a service is an experimental version where we keep updating it so that you get the latest features. And we are also seeking like collaboration, right? So if you want to try this out and give us feedback, and if you want to collaborate with the IBM research team, I encourage you to do that. It'll be really beneficial both ways in terms of how these features evolve to make that impact. Okay, so if you didn't get anything that I have been talking so far, or if you were sleeping, you can wake up now, because I'm going to talk about a brand new topic, nothing with what I was talking until now. Okay, this is a new product, so you still can get something out of this meeting. So time to wake up. Now let's get into API Connect. I feel like you can relate to this in terms of how you do the testing of your APIs. We have seen many automation frameworks or tools where you can manage your test cases, which is nothing but sending a request and a response. And you have an automation framework that will have your regression bucket, maybe hundreds or thousands of test cases. You run it, you schedule it, you see the report and which test cases passed and which one failed. You go back and add new test cases. We are all used to doing that if you are in the API development organization, right? Or in the testing. But here, again, this is also, I'm so excited about this because I got the opportunity to work closely with the IBM research here again. Here, you don't have to write any test cases. That's automatically done by this auto test assist. What it does is it looks into your OpenAPI document. It doesn't need any production data, no complex setup, nothing. As long as you have a very well-defined API. When I say well-defined, think about the API design, right? Like, have you thought through which endpoints should be invoked first, which endpoints should be invoked next, things like that, right? So if you had thought through and if you have designed and if you have documented your APIs clearly, you're including your parameter names and such, the tool can read the API document and just start running tests against that API document. I'll get into some details as to how it can do that. It uses this concept of biased random request generation. I will go into that if you are interested in the details in the next slide. But it basically comes up with, okay, for this request, it is trying to look for a customer ID or a number as an input, so it can generate lots of data that fits that format, right? So it automatically generates that, and it keeps sending it. So you can run it for 2 hours, 2 minutes, or 13 hours, right? It depends on how much you want to test your API and how deep and broad your API is. And this project is also now integrated into our Cloud Pak for integration portfolio, where you can go and look at the API testing component and start running the tests. So I'll show you a demo with a sample bookshop API application when we get to that. But you can see everything integrated into the same UI. May I know how many here are API Connect customers? Data Power, anyone? Okay, that's fine. So I just want to mention that this is a methodology that we've also written a white paper on, which is applicable not just for specific environments or products, but it is also applicable as a framework and a methodology that can be integrated into an automation test frame, into your existing automation test framework. I'll share the links to that at the end of this slide. But the whole idea or the methodology of how you would do random test generation is this. So you provide the API specification, and then you have an analyzer which can look into your API and deduce the resource dependencies, like creation has to be done first before deletion can happen, right? Or even a GET request can happen. So first you have to create a customer ID before you can look up on that customer. So those kind of API semantics, we call, or API extensions, are done using an analyzer, and it builds a semantic model of the API in terms of resource dependencies. And once it builds that, it sends these resource dependencies to this generator and checker, which can generate requests, and every time there is a response received, it is stored in an internal state. So you're not blindly executing thousands of requests and responses. The auto test framework can remember, oh, this is the response I received for my previous request. So I'm learning from that, right? And I'm going to be sending a new request. For example, if I sent a create request and I got back an ID, I know that the creation was successful. So I remember that in my internal state. And the subsequent request, I'm going to send a lookup on that ID that was returned in the previous request. And if the ID is missing, then I know that that test case failed. As simple as that. But this internal state can help with syntactics checking and also semantic checking, where I know exactly what I'm expecting, but I didn't get the expected response, right? And then the developer or the tester also has a lot of customizations that they can do to make the framework test specific areas of your API. You can say, okay, just focus on the post operation and keep generating multiple thousands of requests only on the post, because I'm confident on the rest of the operations, right? Something like that. And also, what is your goal for coverage? Maybe you want to do security-based testing, or you want to see test OWASP top 10 security, right? So things like that. So these are all potential scope for how this framework can be extended. So at this point, I can switch to show a demo of this one first, because I'm hoping that this will still be fresh in your memory when I just talked about that. Let me see how I'm doing with my time. Okay. Okay. So I'll go with this. Enter full screen. So what you're seeing here is the Cloud Pak for integration, where I'm logging into the IBM product, Cloud Pak, which is an API management solution, especially the designer. That's where I'm logging into the API designer. And this Cloud Pack for integration also has other, everything packed into one product, the App Connect, API Connect, and anything that you need for your integration capabilities are all packed. That's the Cloud Pack product. But in that, I'm just going to go into the API Connect. I'm logging into the API Manager. So here you will see what I was telling you, right? So all the things that you need for your API economy, I should say, how you develop APIs, the product manager, how is he going to manage the different catalogs, and then how are you going to connect your APIs, what gateway you're going to be using, and where those gateways are. So this is like one-stop shop for you to manage all of your API environment. And one of the components here is the test APIs. And that's where we are going to go dig into. This, in the test APIs, you can create tests, you can manage tests like how I mentioned, although it's not manual, but you can write thousands of test cases. But that's not what I'm going to be showing right now, right? So if you create a test, so I have created a test suite called Bookshop, and that's going to put me into this page where I can write test cases and I can manage them. But as you can see here, I haven't written any test case manually. I didn't even create one request or response myself. I go into the second tab, which is the Auto Test Profiles tab. And as you can see, I have created configurations, and these are not the actual tests. These are configurations to tell the framework to start testing this API. So I'll create a new profile, which is called the API Days demo, but I'm first specifying which API I want this framework to test. Here it's the Bookshop API. And I talked about the extensions file, right? The semantics, which actually deduces the resource dependencies, that is automatically generated for you in the next step. So it's going to generate the extensions file. I can specify a name. And you also have the capability to edit this extension. So if you didn't design your API correctly, then there's extensions, the Open API Analyzer, which is inbuilt, it may not be able to deduce the right dependencies. So you can go and edit this if you want. But in this case, I'm just going ahead with continuing whatever was generated by default. So once I create the extensions that get saved into the profile, and then I can go and, so sorry about the lighting here, but this is the place where you can say, where is your API located? So now that you have given your API document, you also need to tell the tool to go and connect to it. And if you look at this file, which is a configuration file, you have all the other capabilities that also you can configure. So here I'm saying, just keep running even if you encounter errors, right? The maximum number of errors to accept is unlimited in this case, but you can limit this. Once you have hit a certain number of errors, you can ask the tool to just stop. Say you're doing something overnight and you just don't want to keep it running. Even if it is an error, if there are a lot of errors, you can do that. And I want to pause here and talk about the operation. So this is where I said, you can actually leverage the tool to test specific areas of your API. So here what I'm saying, for the post method, give more weight as 3. And for all the other operations, just do 2, right? And I'm also going to say in the operations section, don't even bother about testing specific operations that I'm listing under that. See where I say, don't even bother about this paths, right? Services, author, don't even do any post there on or the category or the usage. So just ignore that. So you have the capability of adding weights to the randomness. That's what I want to call out here. So based on that, you report. And how can you access your API? So because this is a demo, I am just using some basic auth with the password to connect to the API. But once it's saved, it can be run, and you start seeing that it starts to generate the calls like it just figures it out, like from the API, it starts to generate the request, responses, internal states, so all that is doing behind the scenes. And I ran it for 2 minutes, but I can stop if I want to just take a look at all these failures that are reported, right? So I'll just pause here and show that this is the final report that I'm getting, where you can see that this path succeeded with this many errors, 4xx errors, right? 4xx is maybe it is returning a response of 401 or a 404 unauthorized, but the specification didn't match that, right? You didn't specify that in your API specification, but the backend is returning such an error. For example, look at this line. Here, the 4xx was a success. In this case, that is what I'm expecting. When I'm doing a delete operation, I am expecting a 401 or a 404 because you're not authorized to do a delete, and I got that correctly. But in these cases, you didn't even specify that in the API document. Right? So that's the kind of details that you get, and what errors, total errors, and pretty much the whole report. And you can actually look into the specific API calls that were done. So even if you want to go back to your actual test cases, managing and writing the test case and doing the responses, you can go to this API calls section and you can copy paste the request and response that this tool has generated, right? So maybe for a regression bucket, you fixed some part of your backend and you want to test that specifically, right? So I still have 10 minutes, so I'm going to stop this one and then go back to the GoFa demo. Bear with me, because if you didn't get what I was talking, hopefully you will still get something out of this by looking at the demo. Yes, so the API management solution, so if I go back all the way before I launched the API testing, so the question is, where do we support version control? So this is the place, right? So because this session was focused more on the testing, if you go to the manage, develop APIs and products, here it has a very powerful capability in terms of which version you want to publish to which catalog, and how do you maintain the different versions, or if you want to expose your versions through different gateway services. So all those capabilities are in this component when you click on that. Okay, and those APIs is what we are testing here, right? So this is basically you published something and you want to test it. So you publish and then you get the URL where the API was published. Then you go into testing that. So this tool very well fits within the development phase of your API. So as a developer, before you promote it into production, you can run this overnight and see whether all the paths of your API were hit by this tool, right? So that way you get a sense of potential bugs that might get uncovered. So that's where we see this tool being used, but there is nothing preventing it from using in production also. Okay, so I'm keeping.
Where is the test data provided? Test data.
That's what I'm saying. So test data is not provided explicitly. That's the perspective that I want to clarify, that here you're giving a well-defined documented API that documents, this is my operation, this is my parameter, it takes a string, it takes a number, things like that, right? So if you have defined your API with the right data types, the analyzer is going to look into that and automatically start generating. If you want to do customization, so maybe you have specific IDs, for example, in the bookshop example, ISBN number is a specific format, right? If you didn't specify that, the tool will just generate some random string for that ISBN number, and all your requests will fail because it doesn't match the ISBN. So in that case, you can go and say, okay, ISBN field of this API should be of this format, like a regular expression. You just give, then the tool will be able to deduce, oh, then it will start generating random requests. So you don't give any test data.
What if the service has
Right. So in this case, you're testing what you're exposing as the end API, right? If you want to test the other service, then you can expose that as another API and test it. But as of now, this is not going to test all the backends. It is going to send to the application that you're exposing as an API. So yeah, so that way it is going to uncover all the issues with that backend. But if you want to go down further, then you have to expose those as APIs to test. So that's why this is different from, I think you're referring to having the analytics information or the logging, which can go into different microservices and get that, right? That is not this framework, right? For that, you need to hook in the production data, the telemetry information and all that. Okay, so I will do this demo. It should take only like 3 minutes. Oh, sorry. So as I was showing you, right, you have to specify the security explicitly as to how you're going to connect to the API. But this, as I was saying, this is the first version of what we have released, right, in terms of how you can materialize the methodology that I explained to you of random test generation. But there is a lot of scope for enhancing this, even for securing the APIs and testing that, right? So in the product today, we don't have that capability of even testing the security before connecting to the API, but there's a scope to even do that. But the framework itself, how you do the random test generation, that can cater to security, OWASP top 10, or coverage-based implementations, right? Okay.
Elaborate on the point where you're saying that without connecting to the API, you cannot do the security test. So,
yeah, so
like if I connect this app to the API that I have, I will be able to test the security coverage. Or
if you connect and if you have already provided the credentials to the tool, it will be able to connect and test. But what she was asking was, if you have some bugs when you are providing the credentials, say you have enabled OAuth, I think that was your question, right? So in the initial, before even you connect to the API and you want to test that OAuth implementation or how it gets the token and passes the token, if you have that, there is a potential to expand that, but this demo didn't cover that. That's what I was saying. Okay, so real quick on the Gopher demo. So going back to the previous topic that I was talking to you about, how you can connect multiple applications together. This one, it shows, this is the tile where you can click on it and describe your integration in natural language. So if there are existing templates, obviously these are available. But if you don't have existing templates, we have just enriched this search bar, to give you an indication of what kind of queries that you can ask this GOFA, the goal-oriented flow assist, right? Either you want to do a trigger action or a data consolidation integration. So I'm going to use something like open a ticket on ServiceNow from an identified issue in Slack and send an email using Gmail. So this is how you would expect your users to just type in English, right? Like what are the things that you want to do here? So once I give this, the knowledge graph, if you remember how I mentioned the knowledge graph, the AI planner, so all that is working behind the scenes, and then it is, boom, giving you this flow from scratch. Like you don't even have to drag and drop anything. It is automatically built for you. And it is put in the right order. See, the service now comes first, so it's not blindly like putting these connectors. It's actually parsing the input and identifying from where to where and then what, right? So all of these, they go together, and you also see the predictions, like why it chose the event to create the raw message rather than maybe delete, right? So that's what it shows here in terms of the explanations of how it came up with this flow, right? So once I'm also going to show another example here. Okay, so that one shows how much confidence it had on each of these different objects. So once this is done, I wanted to show another sample where I can actually open that in the designer and show you how the different fields are mapped. So here I'm syncing Salesforce lead with Insightly leads. So Insightly is another application and Salesforce is application. And as soon as I did that, it put these two connectors together. Right now I'm going to go and open that in this designer, which is again local. And once I open it, all the information from Salesforce is extracted out and all those have to be mapped to this application, correct? And that is done automatically. So this, wherever you see this light bulb, we are using some kind of AI like learning. So here we have 14 suggestions automatically to map the first name, last name from Salesforce, again to similar parameters in the next application, right? So it automatically gives these suggestions for you. And once you can apply these suggestions, it goes on to populate these values and it will enable the flow. This flow, you can make it active once you have configured all the required mappings between this application and that one. So that's what you would see. So see, your flow is ready to be started. So once you start the flow, which means at this point your flow is running. So it's going to keep monitoring Salesforce, and when something new gets created there, it's going to push it to Insightly. Like you don't have to do anything special in that case. So if you go back to the dashboard, I show that it is running. So everything that I showed here, minus actually opening it in the designer. So all that is also available as a service, which is what I'm going to go and show you a link. So if you go back to this, if you notice there is a link here, if you want to try a more advanced version of this feature, so you can go to that link. And you will see pretty much the same thing. You have to accept to the terms and conditions. And this is also where we are tracking and getting feedback from our users, how this feature is typically used in our customers' environment. So if you're interested in collaborating, you can go to this cloud endpoint and start playing out. Like you can just connect even today if you want to go to this. I have posted a link in my presentation if you want to directly go to that cloud service. And here we show all the applications that we support and a similar kind of an environment. So with that, both the demo, I know it's a lot, but I'm hoping that recording will be available and you'll be able to go back and watch. That's why I wanted to cover all of these. And here are the links to the GOFA architecture where it was published. And if you want to go to this service, just accept the terms. You have to create an IBM ID, accept the terms and conditions, and you can play around with it. And then the white paper on the auto test that I mentioned. There's also a nice blog and a video that you can go take a look at, and also the release link. If you have registered, right, you should be able to access these presentations. So I'm sorry, it was a little bit rushed towards the end, but I am around, and if you have any questions, I can answer them. But I think I'm almost out of time and getting ready for the next session. Am I right? Thanks, everyone.